The question tonight is, can you prepare for table topics? How many of you think you can prepare for table topics? It's supposed to be improvised, right? Oh, I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one. Yes, absolutely. It is not only possible, but I would suggest that it is necessary to prepare for table topics. You can't prepare for a specific table topic, but you can prepare yourself to be ready for table topics in general. Let me tell you, I'd like to start by telling you what it looks like, for those of you who've never done this before, what it looks like to be a part of a table topics contest. I think you'll understand as I go through the various steps how it can be a little bit scary in the preparation phases. But then after that, I'll tell you how you can make it less scary. So it starts a few days ahead of time when you get a little email that says from the contest chairman who says, come to the briefing. So you go to the briefing. In the past couple of years, the briefing has always been in Zoom. But when we are not remote, but we are together in the same place, the briefing will be the same day as the contest. All of the contestants come into the room, and there you are, one of 6, 7, or 8 people. And everybody's kind of looking at each other and, oh, I wonder if they're any good. I wonder if they're any good. But this is the best time because that's when you get to meet other people who are as crazy as you are, and they're competing in table topics. Now, some people get really competitive and they don't talk. And their faces are real grim, and they just collect their information, and then you see them at the contest. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those people who's joking around and talking to people and getting to know people, because at that point, that's about the only thing you can do. After the debriefing, of course, it's the day of the contest, and everyone gets sent into a room, a breakout room, and it's kind of silent. Unless you're the first speaker. If you're the first speaker, you get to go, and then you can enjoy the rest of the round and listen to everybody. But in the meantime, you're in the breakout room, and you're kind of nervous, and everybody's talking. You know what? It's a lot of fun. It's a great way to know other people when they're in kind of that fun, nervous moment. Then it's your turn. You get rushed into the room, and they say the prompt, your name, the prompt, and your name. And that's it. It's your turn. It's your moment. You have 2 minutes. Some people, they're great. They just start speaking right away. But some people wait, think for a moment, and then start. And my friends, I would suggest that that's what you do too. But let me finish the rest of the contest. Now, if there are some people after you, and there usually are, you can listen to their speeches and be amazed at what happened in their heads on the same prompt as what you got. And it's incredible, because I think that's the moment when we realize how creative table topics really are. And there you have it. That's the end of the contest. You win or you lose, who cares? You've just had a lot of fun, and you've grown because you've met people, and because you got to see human creativity right before your very eyes. So I hope, based on this, if you've never competed before, that you'll give it a try. But I promised to say how you can prepare for that moment when you get the prompt and you hear your name and it's your turn to speak. There are 3 things that you can do to get ready. And the first one starts long before your contest. And this is probably one of the best kept secrets of table topics and improvised speaking in general. Create a story vault. Now, many of you in Pathways, you probably discovered that there is a story collector. And I'd like to show you what that looks like right now. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I haven't timed out here. Let's see here. Yep, I have not timed out, so this will work well. So on the Pathways program, you go to Basecamp. You can see here that I have already opened it up, but you go to Basecamp, and on your Basecamp, you will see Story Collection. Now I have it here because I've already started building a story collection, but I use a different system that I'll show you in a few minutes. And the story collector looks like this. And what you do is you can come up with a bunch of story collections. You can change their names. I just put various stories. And here you can start to put in your stories. And you have the possibility with your story to write as much as you like and then save it. And there you have it. The story collector, which is a part of Pathways. How many of you have seen the story collector? Anybody? Oh, it's new for lots of people. Good. Well, I'm glad. So go look it up in your Pathways program because that's something that you can use to collect your own stories. What does this mean? When I discovered this story vault idea, it was Manoj Vaduzavan, who it was the, I can't remember which year, world champion public speaker. And he suggested making a story vault. And what is a story vault? It's a place where you write down all the stories about your life. So one day I sat down and I started to write. I actually hand wrote out my stories, and I thought, I remember the time when I first came to Italy and I went to the airport in Chicago with my sister, and I started to remember stories. So I wrote that down. I wrote down the date. I wrote down what happened. And that was enough. I just started writing down all the stories I could remember. That year in Halloween, that birthday party, the first time I drove a car, and so on and so forth. These are all stories that once I've remembered them and brought them to mind, now I can start to think in my mind, what sort of lessons did I learn from those situations? So the first time I drove a car, maybe I discovered that I could do anything I wanted to if I practiced. Okay, so that's the lesson that I learned. And what I did after I built this story vault, now I'll show you what I did with my story vault. I used Excel, and I'm going to show you my story vault right now. Can you see that? So my story vault has, that's not the right page, sorry. My story, I started getting really nerdy about it, and I collected all of my stories, and I classified them with themes, the lessons that could be learned, is there any humor in this story, the emotions I felt, and then I got really nerdy, and I remembered the year that it happened, how old I was, and then I numbered them. Now, what do you do once you've collected all of these stories? What do you do with all of these stories? Now, by the way, I will send you, as soon as I'm finished speaking, I will send you a copy of this Excel file, not with my stories. You're going to have to put your own stories in there. Just the template, so that you too can start to collect in your story vault all of your stories. Now, what do you do with those stories? Somebody said to me, so now you start to practice and you make up a 2-minute speech about each one. No, that's not the point. The point is to bring all of those stories into your mind. Every once in a while you can review them, and so that when you're given a prompt that makes you think of a story, you've already reviewed all of your stories, and you can use them to talk about the lessons that you learned or funny things that happened to you, and so on and so forth. So that when you are given a prompt in table topics, your mind doesn't go blank. You suddenly have a wealth a treasure trove of stories that you can go in and pull out. How many of you would like to have a story vault? Cool. Well, then I will give you an Excel file where you can build your own story vault. Now, the warning here is, friends, Toastmasters, do not make up speeches ahead of time that you then use for any old prompt. You will lose points with the judges if you do that. I have seen people do that. It's not even fun to listen to. Sometimes we can't think of anything, and so we do say something that is unrelated to the prompt, but it's best if you have a treasure of stories that you can go and pull out. But this takes time. It took me a Saturday morning to sit down and write them all. And guess what? I now have 119 stories. I couldn't possibly remember them all. And sometimes when I get a prompt, none of those stories come into mind. But because I have practiced thinking about them and thinking about finding lessons, I'm much better at, on the moment, coming up with something that might be interesting to the prompt. So that's the first thing that you can do to prepare. The second thing you need to do to prepare is to work on your emotions. Because it's stressful to get up there and have to speak in 2 seconds. And that's why Toastmasters, from the very beginning, has had all of us practicing table topics. Because that's the way that we can be more relaxed, even in our rehearsed speeches. Because we know that anything that happens, we're not going to be at a loss for words. So I'm not going to get into relaxation techniques, but find your own way to make sure that you are relaxed when you stand up and you receive that prompt. Now, and there are lots of things that you can do, but like I said, tonight isn't the right time to talk about them. But make sure that, I guess, the best way to change your mindset is to think of table topics as a very fun game. I can't wait to get that prompt. I'm just excited when I know I'm going to get a prompt. And if you accept it, it's the old yes and from theater. If somebody gives you something, you make something with it. It's like when they give you lemons, you make lemonade. That was even a prompt at one district table topics competition 3 years ago. The third thing that you need to do is you need to have a plan for when you're going to speak. And here is my plan for you. When you get the prompt, stop, think, breathe. Stop, think, breathe. Why? Because in the nervous moment, your body is flooded with adrenaline. And the only way to get rid of the adrenaline and to calm yourself down is to breathe. And in the moment that you're breathing, you can think. And what do you think about when you're thinking? You think about the end of your speech. Where do I want to go with my speech? What's the point of the next 2 minutes? The gift that I've been given and that I can give back to my listeners. So stop, breathe, think about what you want to say. And if you're really good, you might even think of a mini structure on the inside of your speech. But that's not really necessary in only 2 minutes. You don't need to say, and here are 3 things in a table topics. But you might want to have, here's the problem and here's the solution. Here's what happened and here's what I felt. A structure that's very simple because you really only have 2 minutes. And finally, once you've gotten through with your speech, don't forget to conclude. And that's why if you've thought about the ending, starting from the beginning, your conclusion is simply the ending that you thought of from the beginning. So really, table topics, you have to think of a lot of things in a small amount of time, but it's really not that difficult. finally, and this is the biggest part of the preparation, is to do it over and over again. Get out there, show up, do table topics every single time you can. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And when you're good at improvising your speech, you're always more calm, cool, and collected when you have to do the same thing at home, at work, at church, in politics, wherever. So I hope that, I'm leaving time now for questions, but I hope that this has given you or inspired you to do more table topics, but especially to prepare your story vault so that you can not only do table topics in your clubs, but you can also compete in the contests, and especially instead of making it be a scary thing, letting it be something that's a lot of fun and lets your creativity explode.